So now let's talk about the app, StockEdge. And joining me is the co-founder, Vivek Bajaj, who's come to our studio to talk about StockEdge. Vivek, thanks so much. Before I talk to you about StockEdge, we've got a surprise lined up for you. And the surprise is that we actually interviewed one of your investors, Ramesh Damani, on StockEdge, why he likes StockEdge, what made him invest. Here's that special surprise.
I think I met Vivek Bajaj in an evening at CCI when he was visiting us, and I was immediately struck by the entrepreneurial ability, the passion that he had. Even at that time, he was not talking about creating an app with 50,000 users, but taking on the established data service players in the world, and which are, as you know, Reuters and Bloomberg. And in that enthusiasm, I was very impressed that there was a kernel of integrity, that he was so honest about his approach, so dedicated his ambition, 24/7, working on the entrepreneur, living, dreaming, breathing it. So, I thought, I don't really do private equity, but I found a guy who, matched the passion and integrity, which I find are very important in running any business. And, so I told Vivek, I'd be happy to give him a small portion of the funding.
Vivek, good surprise?
Wow, it's a brilliant surprise. Thank you so much, Nayantara, for that.
Do you talk to him very often?
Yeah, so once in a month I make sure that I do go to Bombay and I sit with him, I discuss whatever developments is happening, and he's amazing in giving us feedback and his thought process, and I think he's a great value addition to our company.
So now let's talk about StockEdge. How did the idea come about, and where does it go from here?
Yeah, so Nayantara, thank you so much for inviting us and covering us. Before that, I will have to touch the brief background about me. So I've been running a prop trading desk in India for almost 15 years now, and we have almost 150 traders who trade full time into the market. And we have been avid user of professional softwares like Bloomberg, Reuters to find out stock trading ideas or investing ideas for ourselves. Now, way back in 2013, I realized that it's such a critical thing that one should have an independent tool so that one could do their own homework and become more independent in market. And professional users like us have been blessed with softwares like Bloomberg and Reuters, etc. But poor retail audience, individual investors, they can't afford these kind of tools, and it's very, very difficult for them to become independent in that scenario. So largely they have been dependent on intermediaries and other institutions who have been providing them tips and advisories, and they have been kind of not been able to create a kind of wealth they could have created if they would have become independent. Now, with that philosophy in 2015, we thought that let us create a tool which should be handy, which should be available to anyone at any time, and which should serve the purpose of retail audience where they get the information at the right time.
You say that data analytics, the insights. Give us an insight. Give us an anecdote on what's different about the insights that you provide. Give it with an example.
Right. So typically as a trader, when manual trading was very, very active, we used to follow certain key price-based parameters like the stock which are crossing 52-week high, or the stocks where promoter pledge is going up, or the stocks where moving averages crossover is happening. Now, these are the data points which have always been available to us, but retail investors never got those data points. So the typical data points on analytics on top of those data points, which is now available to retail individual investors on mobile app free of cost. And these help retail investors to know the reason why a stock is going up or a stock is going down.
But your app is not free of cost either. How much does it cost?
Nayantara, 90% of the data in our app is free, and it actually has 1 billion data point. And only 10% data, which is value added outputs which we are creating for the users, is chargeable, and it's only 400 rupees per month, which is almost equivalent to 15 minutes of ice cream session for a family. So, and that too we have to charge that because there is a cost associated. This organization has more than 100 people, so to recover the direct cost of data subscription which we are paying to our vendors, we need to recover those costs, but still 90% of the StockEdge is freely available to everyone.
I've got to ask you, Vivek, that how do you also stand out in a space which seems overcrowded, seems cluttered, right? There are now lots of mobile apps involved with stock markets, portfolio management, etc. So how do you stand out? Or what is different about StockEdge in that sense?
Right. So, Nayantara, when we started StockEdge and when we took a survey of people about our intent to do something like that, and people said that there is already big daddy in the app world in financial markets, and you really want to compete with that person, and there were other tools also trying to create a mark for themselves. But still, we launched it because we were trying to do something unique, something very different from what other people are doing. Others are more focused on giving lots of information to retail audience, and one has to understand that retail audience, they don't understand anything. The basic premise, the basic hypothesis of most of the products is that people know. Our basic hypothesis is that people don't know. So our app is meant for people who have no understanding. So very high level of learning is integrated in our app, and that's the core philosophy we started with. And see the response, almost 1 million and more people have downloaded, and there are almost 200,000 people who are active on our app. That clearly signifies that the philosophy of integrating learning with analytics has really worked for us, and this is just the starting point. We have too many outputs more lined up.
Like what?
Yeah. Like there are a lot of things like integrating with the transaction framework, like providing ready-made outputs like thematic stock ideas, providing ready-made portfolio of rockstar investors, providing them strategies which with a given probability which works in market. And the other most critical thing is the quality of data. In India, the quality of financial data, I'm sure Nayantara, you'll acknowledge that it's quite poor, because the whole process of data collection is from PDF to database. Now back there in Calcutta, we are trying to create a very, very strong ecosystem of corporate database, so that the quality of data which is hosted in StockEdge should be very, very superior, because after all, people are banking their money based on the data which we are providing.
So what next? You mentioned transaction desk. What does that mean?
Transaction means ultimately the whole ecosystem of providing learning and access to data would conclude by when we allow people to transact through our platform, and that is our next big thing which we want to focus on, and that's where we would like to raise fund also, that our app should have the capability to help people to transact in various assets, financial
and
assets.
that will only be stock markets, or would you look at all kinds of financial products?
Yeah, so good that you asked that question, Nayantara, that we have as an organization evolved, and now we are no more only a stock market organization. We have evolved to overall financial management vertical. So we are creating products around mutual fund, around insurance, around other asset class, including stock market, so that an inclusive participation of retail audience can happen. But the philosophy still remains the same, that people don't know. So our core of helping people to know first and mentoring them to successful financial management will always be there.
We played you that surprise for you, the Mr. Ramesh Damani, on why he invested in StockEdge, why he likes StockEdge. Having said that, do you have other investors like Mr. Damani?
Yes, we have some incredible mentors. The fundraising round which we did last year was largely oriented towards people who mentor us. So we actually recently met one of my mentors, Dinesh Agarwal, who is the founder of India Mart, which got listed recently. And there are other mentors like Ajay Sharma. He's a fund manager based out of Singapore. So these are the people who are user of the product and who believed in the philosophy which we were following. Now we are kind of ready to get institution funding, so we are in talk with a couple of VCs who would like to invest and then take it over to the next level.
So can you tell me how much it is that you want to raise?
Nayantara, we are still working on that Excel sheet where we will find out the exact amount needed, but that will be definitely on the higher side of 3 million to 4 million.
You mentioned Dinesh Agarwal, Ajay Sharma. I know Ramesh Damani uses your app.
Right.
Which other smart money wealth creators use your app?
Well, I would love to name almost all the broker house and the owners of the broking firm, but obviously I can't name them in the public forum. But almost all geniuses of stock market, our app is there as part of their mobile phone. For some it would be on the first screen, for some it will be on the second screen, because there are certain data points which we provide very, very accurate and in a very, very nice manner.
You want to give me an example? I had to get this out of you. Any one stock where you got the best insight and people benefited from the StockEdge insight?
One big idea which we identified through StockEdge was when Reliance made that multi-year breakout, and there was a surge in delivery, and there was quite a significant move when it came into the 52-week high zone. So I would say that 850 level, around that, it was quite a revelation and good stock identification for our app.
What has been StockEdge's biggest milestone or achievement so far?
Well, the biggest milestone is that we are the highest rated finance app in India is 4.7 rated, which is way above any other app in our country right now. And also the most important thing is the 1 million plus downloaded app. So these are the two critical ones. And we obviously are building more data points into it. So I think the bigger ones are still yet to come.
Ramesh Damani said what he really liked was you and your passion, your enthusiasm, how you were dreaming about doing this 24/7. And from what you're telling me, I feel you're not over with your vision as yet. So can you tell me, when you look at your app, because you know there's obviously room to improve things, more things to achieve, what's missing? That's also good to know.
Well, that is the clear vision, and I'll share this with you. So if you go to BSE site and see that there are 4 crore KYC which is there in the exchange, that means technically there are 4 crore investors. And if we see the DMAT data of NSDL and CDCL, there are around 3.5 crore DMAT account holder. So essentially the active investor portfolio in our country would be around 1 crore to 1.5 crore in equity market. What we want to do is help them, all these guys who have equity investment either directly or indirectly, to help them to get the billion-dollar question answered, that what should I do with my stock which is there in the portfolio.
With that, Vivek, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out, for joining us here on ET Now in our studios. All the best. We look forward to many more such interviews with you.
Thank you so much, Nayantara, for this.
With that, we're going to take a short commercial break, but stay tuned. You're watching a very special edition of Startup Central.